Let's check in with Ed Sonshine, the CEO of RioCan REIT. And obviously there are a lot of tenants at RioCan Properties who have been navigating through this storm that is 2020. Ed, nice to see you as always. And, I think one of the takeaways from yesterday is you've got a government spending a lot of money, trying to send a message, we've got your back. How has it felt on your end?
Well, on the ground, the government money has been invaluable to many of our tenants. There's no question about that. And extending the rent subsidy and the wage subsidy into June, on the one hand, it's very welcome. On the other hand, it does leave me a little bit depressed about how long this is going to last.
I mean, look, what's interesting to me about this is governments have to make forecasts, predictions. CEOs like yourself have to make forecast predictions. How are you thinking about it? It seems to be in the hands of COVID. It seems to be in the hands of vaccine rollouts. But what's your best guess as a business leader in the road ahead?
I think it's going to be as I think the finance minister mentioned, it's going to be a long, dark winter. And you've heard a lot of retailers here in Toronto and Peel in particular with a pretty abrupt lockdown that happened I guess just over a week ago. And they're supposedly, that goes till December 20th. I wouldn't bet with the way case numbers are going that it's going to come off on December 20th. So we're sort of hunkering down to assume that the next 4 to 6 months are going to be difficult for many of our tenants. I think without the government aid, obviously, it would be a lot more difficult. We're already seeing some of the strains because you have to appreciate the rent subsidy program. The previous one expired, I think, September 26th or 27th, which is over 2 months ago. But none of the money under the new program has started flowing yet. Our best guess, and we're working carefully with some of our tenants to assist them in applying to CRA, will be the earliest anybody's going to see any money is perhaps 10 days from now, which will be 2.5 months. It's a long time.
Yeah, and even as you've been speaking, we got in the province of Ontario the daily COVID case count. It's north of 1,700 cases, more than 700 new cases in the city of Toronto. You were kind of alluding to this earlier, but we've got cities like Toronto in this lockdown mode up until pretty close to Christmas. If these numbers stay the way they are you, as a business owner, anticipating the government would continue with those lockdowns?
You know what? I never thought I'd say this out loud, but I sort of feel sorry for the government, the provincial government in particular, because they're everybody wants them to do something. I personally don't think the lockdowns, the way they're doing it, is particularly helpful. It's probably too early to see if they're going to have an impact on the cases. So far, now it's only been, I guess, 8 days, so it's too soon. So far, we haven't seen any impact. Of course, there's always the contra answer, well, they'd be a lot higher if we didn't do it, but that's an answer to anything. But I'm not sure there's a right decision for Mr. Ford to make that's going to please most people. Myself, I think it's being too restrictive and too almost picking on retailers at the most important time of year for them by just saying close down. Nobody's seen any evidence that retail or movies, our exhibition are actually causing any of this. And it'll be interesting to see if the next 2 weeks with these closed, is it going to make a difference? I personally don't think it will.
So, well, hearing you say that, obviously, one of the simple areas to look, if you've got a restriction or a lockdown in one zone and people do want to do holiday shopping and they end up going to another area that isn't going through that, this is the reality of COVID. People see, oh, look, now there are people gathering in that mall or that retail area. So, you're getting feedback on this, I would imagine, every day. And you're telling me, even when we see those images on television or on the internet, that they're overblown?
No, I think what's happening is that there's a lot of Toronto shopping dollars going to places like Vaughan. We have the Colossus Shopping Center up on Highway 7 and 400. We have the Tanger Outlets Mall further up 400. They're extremely busy. So that part's, unless you're going to start literally putting a physical fence around the areas that are in a lockdown, I'm not sure how much that accomplishes. It's just, people that want to go out and shop, they're going to find a place to shop.
So this is, getting back to the federal government story, and,
Yes.
and we have obviously not just seen these dramatic numbers to date, the government committing to more spending over the next few years, depending on the road ahead. What's a little complicated is governments, provincial governments, they have to do what they can. So you see restrictions or you see lockdowns. Then the federal government does what they can with their deep pockets and they earmark money. We're not quite sure how some of that new money gets spent. What do you think is the right approach with any new spending that we see, especially for your industry where it's not quite clear when it comes to, big issues like bailing out industries or sector support for, say, retail, what exactly the road ahead is going to look like?
The road ahead, for the federal government, look, I think what they've had to do on the rent subsidy, the wage subsidy, the CERB, if I can remember, where they were basically paying people that were out of work. What's interesting to me is I think there were over 8 million people on that CERB program, but the people unemployed were only about 4 million. I shouldn't say only. For each one of those people, it's difficult. But I think a lot of the money, quite frankly, is being wasted. They're using, and maybe government has no other way to do it. It's a bit of a scattergun approach. What frightens me as a businessman is that I really think by the time we come to summer, one way or the other, probably through a vaccine, wide distribution of a vaccine, we'll be out of this. But when the government says, well, then we're going to put in another 100 billion of stimulus, that frightens me a little bit because I think the stimulus will happen without the government at that point. While a lot of their spending now is necessary, I'm not sure the future ones will be. There is, I think you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of business cash parked on the sidelines. There's an awful lot of personal cash parked on the sidelines as well.
Well, I think a lot of people feel a sense of hope that when things do return to normal, we all get back out there. We have our roaring 20s. But before I let you go, you've undoubtedly got to be thinking about how not just the restrictions have reshaped your industry, but a lot of people shopping online, a lot of people doing curbside pickup, small businesses having to retool on the fly. What do you think the future, obviously you have a very targeted portfolio and you've been really zeroing in on that for the last 5-10 years. But what do you think the future of the mall is in this country?
Well, malls are interesting. I think there's going to be less of them. We have very few, as you know. As you say, we've targeted it. But I think the enclosed malls will be less, but they'll be back. The great malls like Yorkdale or Square One, I think they're still going to be here 20 years from now because they provide a social experience. I don't think we're ever going to get into the place where everybody orders everything online. I don't think we have enough roads to accommodate that. It's almost contra the wish of most municipalities to get rid of cars, to have all these trucks running around delivering stuff to everybody. And also people like to be with other people. I think, you hear a lot about mental health that's going on, mental health difficulties caused by the lockdowns, by the pandemic. And that's because people aren't able to interact with people. Whether it's malls, shopping centers, gyms, movie theaters, those are places where you interact with other people. And I really do think that when people feel safe, and whether that'll be by June, it'll be by September, you will see an explosion of people getting out there and spending money and doing the things they did before.
Things to watch for as we move into 2021, and always good to get your perspective. Ed, thanks very much. Ed Sonshine, the CEO of RioCan.